Chelsea. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am wearing my Halloween witch hat because apparently it's October already and I'm not prepared. How did it get to be October? I don't know. It was 90 degrees out today. Now don't get me wrong, I love Halloween, but Halloween takes like a lot of effort. I don't feel ready. Also, while I do love Halloween, I don't like scary things, and there are just a lot of scary things this time of year that I'm not a fan of. That said, I do have a bunch of semi-spooky reading that I would like to do in October, because as I get sort of semi-spooky books and add them to my TBR over the year, I tend to sort of like stick them together and say these will be October. I don't feel like reading them now. These are going to be the things that I will tackle in October because they are kind of spooky. So this is a mix of all of the things that I've sort of set aside over the last few months to a year thinking maybe Halloween reads. And they will range from things that I've set aside because yes, this is actually something I'm a little scared to read most of the year, to things that I hope will provide some lighter relief. Now, if you happen to be looking for semi-spooky Halloween fantasy recommendations, I did do a video listing some of my favorites that I think are seasonally appropriate and not too scary last year. So I'll link that in case you were looking to fill out your October TBR for yourself. Now, like my last couple of monthly TBRs, I'm not including things that I'm keeping on my reading pile that are carrying over from previous TBR videos, because this is a themed monthly TBR of just the sort of Halloween-y spooky things. But do know that I am going to be continuing to read some of the other things that I've told you I was planning on reading in previous TBR videos. I'm still working on some of that stuff. But one of the books that I have had on my TBR for the past 2 months that I still haven't gotten to absolutely has to go on this list, and it is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir, because all of the skeletons. And yes, I am a little scared to read this book because of all of the skeletons, but I've had this since Book Expo and everyone is talking about it, and this is the 3rd month in a row it's been on my TBR, so I have to read this one. Like, I have a lot of books on my TBR here, and I know I'm not going to get to all of them. I'm going to be picking and choosing, but this one is absolutely 100% happening, I swear. The other book I've got on this list that I am less intimidated to read, but I did put it on my October list, on my October stack of books, because of some of the, you know, spooky ghost themes. That is absolutely happening this month because I am buddy reading it with Rhea from the Book Finch, is Tamsyn by Peter S. Beagle, which is spelled differently from the first name of this author, but pronounced the same. Anyways, I think this is a more YA book from Beagle because I think the protagonist is a teenager. What I know about it is that it's about a girl who moves into a house that she finds is haunted by a ghost named Tamsyn. And it has cats on the cover. There's a real cat and there's a ghost cat. So, cats, yay! So then next I'm going to show you the 2 books I have on this list that are here to provide like lighter diversions from all of the darker, spookier reading that I still think are going to be thematically appropriate for October and Halloween. The first is Unspoken by Rees Brennan. Now, I fell absolutely in love with In Other Lands by Brennan, which I read for last year's Lodestar reading, and I have been wanting to dive into her backlist ever since. This is the first book in the Lychford Legacy series, and the covers of these are absolutely pushing like the in-your-face YA spooky paranormal genre image. But if I know Rees Brennan's writing style at all, I'm guessing this will also be very, very funny and probably kind of emotional. I've seen this described as having some kind of gothic influences, and it takes place in a town called Surrey in the Vale, which I already think is hilarious. The other book that I have for kind of lighter reading on this list is a new middle grade release that was released just yesterday on October 1st, and that is The Dark Lord Clementine by Sarah Jean Horwitz. I picked this up at Book Expo. This is an ARC copy, and this is about a little girl named Clementine who has to become a Dark Lord, and this just sounds delightful. I'd say my next highest priority book on this list, though, after the two that I'm absolutely committed to, which are Gideon the Ninth and Tamsin, is going to be the short story collection Pretty Monsters by Kelly Link. And the reason being that this has been on my October TBR for the past 2 years, and I didn't get to it either of the past 2 Octobers. So, ooh boy, I am overdue. I've actually never read anything by Kelly Link. This one is supposedly a more YA-oriented story collection, as opposed to her more adult-oriented story collections. So I think this should be a good, sort of more accessible place to start with her writing. I've heard people starting with some of her other books who found her writing very dense and confusing. And I don't know that this is a particularly spooky story collection overall. I'm guessing the individual stories will vary. Some of the story titles, though, put me in a kind of Halloween mood, and the cover is definitely very Halloween, October-ish. I do expect that some of these stories will be fairy tale-ish, so I'm very excited about that. Next, I have one library book that I checked out because I thought I'd like to read it this October. And this was one that I kept seeing the UK edition of in Dublin when I was there for Worldcon, and it kept catching my eye. I saw the book and the author featured a lot because I think she's an Irish author. And I didn't buy it in Dublin, but I did come home and place a library hold on the American edition, and that is Other Words for Smoke by Sarah Maria Griffin. You can see that this cover, the American cover, definitely looks kind of spooky. The UK edition is gorgeous. It looks like this, and it's a paperback with sprayed pink edges. It doesn't look particularly spooky, but it was like pretty enough that it kept catching my attention. Anyhow, this is definitely marketed as YA in the US. I'm not sure that's true everywhere. The ways I've seen this described make it sound like it's probably a sort of stranger book than you usually get in mainstream YA, at least these days, but it is about a teenager or teenagers, and I think it's to do with a very strange, bizarre, spooky house. Next one I'm pretty sure I am going to get to because it is short and going to be easy to read is The Girl from the Other Side, Siúil Volume 5, which is a manga series that I've really been enjoying reading slowly as the volumes have been released since it started to be published, but now I have gotten quite behind. This series definitely has a spooky, eerie atmosphere, but it also gets very sweet at times. I enjoy it a lot. And then the last books I have here are the ones that I'm generally a little bit spooked about reading. I'm a little bit intimidated for various reasons. So I've got The Lost Child of Lychford by Paul Cornell, which is the sequel to Witches of Lychford, which is the book that I was actually reading on Halloween last year. Now, I was not super impressed, actually, with Witches of Lychford, which I know is a slightly unpopular opinion. But I already had the second book, so I'm kind of committed to reading book 2, and then unless I love this, I won't continue on with the series. But I've heard that this is like spookier and closer to horror than the first one. At least that's what I think I heard like long ago when this was released. So I'm a little intimidated. And then another novella that I'm a little intimidated by is Rolling in the Deep by Seanan McGuire, which I have a copy of that doesn't have a dust jacket, so I'm going to put the cover image there. This is the story that takes place prior to her novel Into the Drowning Deep. It was published beforehand, but isn't required reading if you want to go into the novel. Pardon, I said this was by Seanan McGuire. It is, but this is under her Mira Grant pen name. Mira Grant is the same person as Seanan McGuire, but this is by Mira Grant. Anyway, I've been terrified to read anything under Mira Grant's pen name because the books that she writes under this name tend to be a little more on the horror side of things. This is Killer Mermaids, but I'm very interested that this book/series is supposed to take a much more like science-y approach to mermaids as opposed to like a fantasy approach to mermaids. And I'm going to read the novella, not the novel, because it's short, and if I like absolutely squick out of it, then I won't have made the longer commitment. And then the last book I have that I'm kind of scared of, even though I've read other books by this author before, because the cover is terrifying and I've heard this is kind of like her scariest one, is Cuckoo Song by Frances Hardinge, which that is just a terrifying doll cover, but this is a changeling story, so I expect it will be folklorish, and I want to read it because I want to read as much of her backlist as I can, but I am scared of this one, and that is why I put it away for Halloween. So there you have my Semi-Spooky October TBR. Let me know what your attitude is towards October reading, if you like actually read horror, if you don't bother trying to do seasonal October reading at all, which like I did not used to because I'm not good at seasonal reading. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you want to, let me know what you think. Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.